in New Albany about 16 years ago. I worked on a garbage truck for 11 years, all over the district. And if you would like to get to know an area, I do recommend working on the back of a garbage truck. It is a great way to see all the back roads, all the farmland, all the neighborhoods, the old ones and the new ones. And yeah, it was a great job, but picking up trash at 22 versus picking up trash at 33 was not the same knees or hips or back. And I left that job when I was 33, and I've been working a sales job over in Jeffersonville for the last 5 years. I've been married for 16 years. My wife, Aberlyn, and I celebrated our 16th anniversary actually just this past Friday. We have an 11-year-old daughter who's in 5th grade, and that's a big part of why I decided to throw my name into the ring to run for office here, because I want to make Indiana a place where my daughter can grow up just like I grew up, a place with good farmland and clean air and clean water. That's whenever I was approached about running earlier this summer, my initial reaction was, why would I ruin my life by trying to run for a public office? And since then, though, it's been a real journey of getting to meet my neighbors, getting to really meet more of my neighbors. And that's why we're here. That's why we're holding this town hall. And I appreciate the American Legion in Salem for letting us put up here. We will put the tables back for the 22 shoot on Saturday, and maybe we'll come back out for that because that sounds like an amazing time. And yeah, so we're gonna go ahead and get started here. We've got a microphone next to the little PA over here if you've got a question. And to kind of open us up, I thought I'd talk about something that everybody loves talking about and loves hearing about, the border. This is something where on the left and on the right, oftentimes, it's a pretty divisive issue. And when it starts talking about it, people get pretty vitriolic pretty quickly. Some of the ugliest impulses that we have as neighbors tend to come out when we start talking about border security versus quote-unquote open borders and the rights of people under the Fifth Amendment to due process and so forth. And I just kind of wanted to say I was listening to a few of our neighbors from South Texas talk about this today on a video. And I think that's something that Democrats should be honest about, Democrats should talk about, is that the response of the federal government whenever Biden was in office to the southern border was very slow. It was very, very, very slow, and a lot of people in South Texas felt like they were on their own. This is something that James Tallarico, a state representative in Texas, was talking about the other day. And listening to James talk about it was really humanized the situation for me, because James Tallarico is a Democrat. He's running for Senate in Texas for national, U.S. Senate. And listening to James talk about it, he used this metaphor that our border should be like a front porch. It should have a big welcome mat, and there should be a door that locks. And that this country needs immigrants. We need a good immigration policy. 30% of the people that build homes in our country are immigrants. 30%. And we know that we have a housing crisis in the United States. We know that we are millions and millions of homes behind on what our neighbors need to have a place to live. We've been behind since the housing crisis in 2008, and we are not catching up. And there's some rhetoric on the extreme sides that says we gotta get everybody out, get all the immigrants out. We're talking about 30% of the people that build homes in our country where we do not have enough homes. Where in the United States, 31 out of 100 people who make less than 40 grand a year, only 31 of them can find an affordable unit. There are not affordable rental units for 70 out of 100 people who are making less than 40 grand in Indiana today. And of those 31 who do manage to find a place that they can afford as a household making less than $40,000 a year, they are spending half of their income or more on rent. That is a crisis that has been created because we've had leaders that have put off taking action to scale our housing to meet the needs of everyday Americans and of people in Indiana. So I kind of wanted to open with that. This is normally talking about immigration, talking about the border is a really divisive issue. And I think that it's something that we need to be honest about. We need to be honest about the Biden administration's failures to create a humane, safe, and secure immigration process. And that's something, but that immigration has been something that the United States government has been kicking down the road for a long time. They've been kicking it down the road for a very long time. And at bottom, I was raised believing that whatever we do, whoever we are, however important we are, we have an obligation to treat other people the way we would want to be treated if the roles were reversed. And that's not always easy, that's not always simple, but it is very clear to me. And I think it's clear to a lot of people. And when we're talking about, whether we're talking about people who need a place to live, because a lot of people in Indiana are struggling to find somewhere to live that they can afford. Or whether we're talking about people like my great-grandfather who came here from Germany, who spoke no English when he came here back in the early 1900s. And he left Germany looking to build a new life in America. We have an obligation to treat other people the way we want to be treated, to treat other people the way we want to be treated if we were in their shoes. And that's something that's always guided me as a person, as a worker, as a dad, and it's something that I would want to bring as a state senator for Indiana. So I kind of want to open this up a little bit. I appreciate you guys coming out. There is a microphone next to the PA if you would be willing, because we've got a couple things recording here to kind of make it easier for people that did not want to come out in the freezing temperatures to this town hall. It's a great time of year to invite people to an event. Everybody wants to come out in the daylight savings dark, in the freezing cold. But yeah, if you have a question, I would love to hear it. I believe this is about building relationships among neighbors. We see the effects in our country of having failed to seriously build bridges with people we disagree with. We see the divisive language, we see violence, and it's something that we have to address by being the first ones to step up and say, hey, we're neighbors, let's talk about it. Let's be honest about it. And that's the kind of representative I want to be. So we're gonna kind of open it up. Be aware the microphones are sensitive and you have to hold them closer to your mouth than you probably feel like is sanitary. You don't have to put your mouth on them, but you do have to put your mouth near them. So I want to kind of open it up for a second. Somebody might have a question or two that we could talk about. If you just want to tee me up and hear my thoughts about something, I'd be happy to do that. I've got 11 siblings. I was homeschooled all 12 grades. I worked a lot of different jobs. I've been on a long journey with my faith, and I'm a dad. What do you want to talk about? Hey, I appreciate it. Would you mind just saying your first name into the mic when you pick it up?
A little bit nervous about these things.
You're crushing it.
My name is Jay.
Okay.
I grew up in South Boston, not a little holler about 10 miles away from here. So this isn't really a question, but I'm a carpenter and a construction worker.
Okay.
Working class all my life. I'd just like to hear some of your thoughts about what we can do to make sure that working class people are treated fairly and wage and, help them get a living wage. And so not really a question, just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jay is from South Boston. But for people that aren't familiar, that is not Boston on the East Coast. That is Boston right here in Indiana, not far from Salem, where we are right now. Jay's a carpenter. He's worked with his hands his whole life, and he's just asking, what can we do to help with wages in Indiana and obviously the broader United States, but we're talking about Indiana here. This obviously is affecting a lot of people in Indiana right now, But not just Indiana, it's affecting people all across the country, right? We've had policies, and this is something that I think both political parties bear a lot of responsibility for. We've had policies that have tried to turn as many things as possible into financial products that can be bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange, many miles from where we are here. And one of the things that has done, I am answering your question. No, it sounds like I'm not. I do a thought bubble thing, and I'm trying to be direct. We have to seriously address where our money is going in Indiana as a state. And when we invest, we have to ask, where are those profits going? Are they going to Indiana where we can reinvest them in our communities? Or are they going to hedge funds and investment firms in the New York Stock Exchange? Because this is something that is affecting us in our state at every level. This year, at the start of the first half of this year, 30% of the single family homes in Indiana were purchased by an investment firm. Not families looking for a place to live, not somebody moving here from elsewhere. Investment firms that immediately take them off the market and they hold them as assets because it's a stable financial asset that they can have as part of a financial product, or they immediately turn it into a particular kind of rental that is not aimed at being affordable for the vast majority of Hoosiers. So whenever we are talking about how do we address chronically low wages, one of the big impacts, one of the ways to measure how much you're making is what you can buy, right? We're talking about the buying power of $1 of a minimum wage job in Indiana. And we know that the minimum wage in our country has not kept up with prices for a very, very long time. We know that low and middle income people in our country have seen wages go up about 18% since 1980. 1980. I was born in 1987. That means that for somebody that started working in 1980 and they were making an average lower middle income job, that has not kept up with inflation, that has not kept up with the effects of globalization, and that has certainly not kept up with how everything that we depend on has been commodified to create profits for big investment firms and big corporations. We know that the biggest recipients of welfare in our country are the big corporations. Walmart can afford to pay a whole lot of people a wage that they cannot live on because Walmart receives huge subsidies from the US government and then turns around and pays our neighbors right here in Indiana wages that they cannot afford rent on and afford groceries in their bills on. One other thing about this is that this entire system, credit cards and mortgages and paycheck loans, these are all systems that have been freed up by both parties over the years to put people into debt so that that debt can be turned into a financial product that is bought and sold on the New York Stock Exchange to enrich the richest people in the world. With our current financial policy in the United States, it is designed to make it so that debt is a really, really profitable investment for the richest people, which is driving away investment in things like infrastructure, which is driving away investment in things like innovation. Because normally that shouldn't be a very financially viable way to just store your money, owning debt, turning more and more things into debt. But we've created a financial system that incentivizes that instead of investment in businesses, investment in innovation, and investment in workers. So what can we do about that in Indiana? I just punched this microphone and I apologize. What can we do about that in Indiana? We can create rules about where the money goes. We can ask and actually interrogate and hold accountable big corporations that want to come here and start businesses and start open facilities and say, what are workers actually going to be paid here to be worth offering tax subsidies, to be worth offering incentives? Because when we incentivize companies that prioritize the New York Stock Exchange over their workers, over our neighborhoods, over communities here in Indiana, we are rewarding the system that has moved wealth out of Indiana and into the portfolios of the richest and most powerful companies and people in the world. And that's not just Indiana, that's happening to every rural community in America, and it has been happening for decades. And it stops when we have legislators that are not titillated by the dangling of like, oh, we're going to build a data center. It's going to be a $6 billion investment. And sure, it's going to suck up all the water. And sure, people aren't going to have power supply and your bills are going to double because we're draining everything for this data center. But it's a $6 billion investment. You can put that on a marketing thing for your next campaign. I was a garbage man before I was here. I was the 4th out of 11 kids before I was here. I know what it is to struggle to get by, and I know what it is to work until it's dark and your back aches. And we cannot have leaders who are more invested in the profits of a big Fortune 500 company than they are in making sure people right here in Indiana have a good job and that the profits are reinvested in our state. So that was a really long answer to that question. But there's a lot of ways. There's a lot of ways that we need to address this problem, right? Thanks, Jay. Appreciate it. Yeah.
My name's Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, how you doing tonight?
You hold that a little closer to your mouth, just like slightly more comfortable. There you go.
Better?
There you
Okay.
go.
So I'm going to dovetail on that. I am a conservative and traditionally aligned Republican, and so I emotionally get where you're at. Conversations I have with Republican friends is we have to have this marriage between incentivization and prioritization, and sometimes that doesn't lead to the deepest pay for our workers. Indiana is not exactly excelling in that category, so we have put a lot of investment in. But if we do restrict things like you might suggest, we have 49 other states we're competing with, and they will go other places. And how do we caveat that so Indiana doesn't then fall behind in pure breadth of economics, right?
Really good question, Ben. Thank you. Yeah, Ben, if you didn't pick it up on the other mics, Ben asked a really good question where basically, if we put more rules around how companies have to invest the profits they make off of being in Indiana, won't that just make big companies be like, well, we're not going to build in Indiana, we're going to go build in Texas. We're going to go build in Missouri. We're going to go build in a state where that is more comfortable letting us do whatever we want with the margins we make off of the labor in whatever the state is. It's a great question. There are a couple of ways that I look at that. One of the first is that, and this I feel like I've moonlit as a libertarian for many years in my 20s before kind of has come to where I am in my political journey. And we know that monopolies suck, right? And it's actually something that on the lot side of the aisle, we see how political monopolies, whether it be blue or red, anywhere that you get an entrenched political monopoly, doesn't matter if it's on the East Coast, mafia types, or whether it's right here in Indiana, when you have a concentration of power and wealth and privilege, eventually it starts serving itself over the people it should be serving, right? And whenever we're talking about, well, if we change the rules so that these big companies don't come here and they don't build here and they go to some other state, what do we do instead? Let's invest in Indiana. There's all of these programs that are focused on Main Street, right? Let's get Main Street in our small towns active again. Let's get small businesses in Indiana active again. Let's do that. We don't need to give billion tax breaks, I mean, data centers is low-hanging fruit. Everybody is understandably and correctly angry about the wave of data centers being built across the country and the efforts to build them right here in Indiana. But whenever we stop going for this low-hanging fruit, we need to make sure that we build another fulfillment center here because it's going to create 100 jobs. We actually have to do the hard work. There are farmers, there are producers just south of us in Harrison County that I know personally that are growing greens. Particularly their business is focused on growing greens mixed greens for restaurants and small grocery chains. And they grow it, they cut it once, they wash it, they package it, and they have been having the hardest time with the local, with some of the local regulations that are making it almost impossible for them to take their organic, to code, to spec grown farm products and sell them to restaurants and local grocery chains. It is incredibly difficult, and every time they get over a hurdle, they are being monitored to the nines, and it makes it really expensive, and it makes it really hard for a farm that has invested huge amounts of their money to be able to offer locally grown produce here in District 47. And there is almost no state apparatus that is aimed at helping them do that. There's a lot that's aimed at, are you doing it right? Did you meet this hoop? Did you get over that? Well, that's not good enough. Solve it, come back to us and let us know when you have. And not an agency that's like, you want to grow local produce for Indiana? Hell yeah, this is how we do it. How can we help you? How can we invest in what you're doing? Because we don't need to be importing all this stuff from Chile. We don't need to be importing all this stuff from Guatemala. We can grow it here in Indiana. We just have to invest in people that are already doing the work, and instead of putting hurdles in their path, make it easier, make it more efficient for them to actually bring their goods to market. Because for good reasons, for understandable reasons, there's a lot of regulations around what you sell people to eat. That's good. We want that. Also, we know that's not working super good. We just had a big revelation that all the cinnamon has lead in it. All of our cinnamon has unhealthy levels of lead in it. And it was, remember this last year? It was all the cinnamon in the applesauce packs for kids because lead makes things red and it's very heavy. When you sell a spice like cinnamon by the ounce, put a little lead in it, you get a lot more bang for your buck. And that was happening at a mass scale. Literally tens of thousands of retailers, a massive producers of things that are really tightly regulated like baby food. So if we're not investing in these big companies, if they go to Texas, if they go to Arkansas, what will we do instead? One, we invest in the people that are doing it right here in Indiana. It's not as easy as being like, aha, Amazon, I'm so glad you're here. You will create 500 jobs. It requires engaged, active, in the community leaders. They're like, right here, they're growing greens. They have a process, they have a farm, they have a model. How can we help them? It's right here, like we have this machine shop. They invested in CNC equipment. They have the capacity to create products. How do we help them? The United States, whenever we got our freedom from Britain, was in a really desperate situation economically. Britain had crazy protectionist policies where all of the manufacturing technology was in Britain. And all of the colonies were set up to produce raw goods. And there were strict laws that prevented the colonies from developing production technologies. The United States was supposed to produce cotton, was supposed to produce tobacco. They could do pig iron, but not steel. They were all the colonies were designed to produce raw goods to feed the technological center in Britain. That Britain had spent a lot of years and money building up, stealing technology from the Low Countries in Europe, being protectionist, and building up this massive engine of industry that everything about their system fed. It's one of the things the founders were pissed about. They were pissed that the colonies were being forced into this primitive, unproductive state. But so we won our independence, and now where are we? We still don't have the technology. It was closely protected in Britain. And it took really deliberate and careful investment and protection by the United States to get fledgling industry off the ground. It took years, and it wasn't easy, but it required the public-private partnership of investing in people who wanted to build, who wanted to produce, who wanted to invest in technology so that the United States could get up to parity with the rest of the modern world. It's not exactly, obviously we are a union of states. We don't do protectionism between states. That's not what I'm advocating for or alluding to. I draw on that analogy because we've seen our manufacturing leave our country and leave our state en masse over the last 30 years as an aspect of neoliberal policies, right? And we've heard a lot of people talk about, well, we need to invest in, we want to be a technology, we're going to be a technology economy. We're going to be a service economy. And that neoliberal project pushed by red and blue over the last 40 years has made one thing really clear. There is no such thing as a technology-only economy. And there is no such thing as a service-only economy. Without manufacturing, without investment in the things, in building the things that people need, we are always going to be in a fight to commodify and create financial products instead of build actual services and invest in technology and manufacturing. So that was a really long answer, which we're going to talk about. My campaign manager is going to talk to me about the length of my answers after this. But if we've got Amazon that doesn't want to build here because we say, hey, the amount of profits you're drawing off of this, it needs to go back to Indiana and you need to pay your workers more. And if Amazon's like, well, we don't want to build in Indiana, no problem. Who are we going to invest in Indiana? Who's working in Indiana right now? It's not as easy as having somebody from Amazon come to the State House and woo a bunch of legislators and say, this is what we'll do for you. You don't got to go nowhere. You don't got to talk to nobody. Just talk to us. And we have billions of dollars. Just give us the incentives to build here. It takes more work, but it can be done. It can be done. And I think that is something that has been surrendered as part of state leadership, not just in Indiana, but around the country. And I think that it's something that we can bring back by being rooted in our communities and standing up and saying, we got to invest in our state. We got to invest in our communities. So, appreciate you, man. Thank you. Anybody else have a thought or question? Oh, I do. If you want to.
Okay, my name's Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy.
My question is, can you talk about the future of healthcare in our district and our state if we stick with the Republicans and how it will affect small town hospitals like ours here in Salem?
Thanks, Jimmy. Jimmy, for those of you that didn't hear the question, he was bringing up the state of healthcare in our district, which is, for those that just tuned in, this is District 47, which is Washington and Harrison and Floyd counties in southern Indiana. He says, if we continue with the status quo, if we continue with the way the current administration and previous administrations for the last 20 years have been doing healthcare, what's the outlook for healthcare in our district? We are keenly aware, especially those of us who are friends with the administrators and the nurses working at Ascension St. Vincent here in Washington County and in Harrison County Hospital, that our hospitals are in trouble. and that they've been struggling for years to stay level, and that struggle has not gotten easier and has really bleak prospects in the coming year. There are a number of reasons for that, and at the core of it is that we are not investing in our local hospitals, and the mechanisms that we've set up to fund our hospitals are mechanisms that we are peeling back and are being peeled back at the national level and are being peeled back at the state level as well. One of the main mechanisms that funds local hospitals is Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements, right? Where the hospital is guaranteed a certain amount of money from the state, from the federal government, for treating somebody on Medicaid, for treating somebody on Medicare. And those keep getting reduced and cut back. Most recently with the Big Beautiful Bill, which was also matched by cuts at the state level. And if I can't, off the top of my head, the percentages are escaping me, but it is a massive amount of the total revenue of these hospitals that depends on reimbursements from Medicaid and Medicare, because this is rural Indiana. This is a place where industry has been cleaned out and withered over the years, where a lot of young people have moved away, and where the core high-paying wage jobs have left for elsewhere. And so we have an aging population. We have a lot of people who are, if they're here, a lot of people who are unable to move away for various reasons. And with that mix of people who need health care, the people that are coming to our hospitals who need care are on Medicaid and they are on Medicare. And if their reimbursements keep getting cut, then the money coming into the hospital keeps getting cut, and the hospitals have to keep making cuts. Harrison County Hospital lost its OBGYN center in April of this year. That means that if you are pregnant and are going to have a baby in Harrison County, your options are Baptist Floyd, which is 45 minutes away from Corydon, or it's Ascension St. Vincent, which is a good 35, 40 minutes away. And that's if you're in Corydon. If you're further south down by Mockport or closer to Crawford County, and God forbid if you're out in Crawford County, not that, Crawford County is great, I love Marengo Cave, but if you're way out in the sticks, the amount of time it is going to take you to get somewhere if you go into labor, or if you start spotting, or if you have a crisis, is absolutely, well, it's an emergency. I know people who work at Harrison County Hospital a little bit better than at Ascension, if you keep touching this microphone. And they have told me that they have young women, young expecting mothers who have come into the emergency room because they are spotting, because they are having worrying symptoms in the middle of their pregnancy. And they have to turn them away and say, sweetheart, you got to get to New Albany. You got to get in your car. You are still 35 minutes away from seeing someone who can help with whatever's going on with your pregnancy right now. And there are good people that run these facilities. They are trying to do everything they can to help our neighbors, and the investment is not there. The will to make sure that healthcare is readily available for our communities has not been there. It's something nobody wants to touch because it's a complicated problem. And this keeps coming back to, where is our money going in Indiana? We know that there were over $80 million in no-bid contracts given out to insiders with the Indiana Economic Development Corporation over the last few years. $80 million in no-bid contracts. We have the means to take care of people's essential needs. What we have not had is people in Indianapolis who insist on seeing where every dollar is going and prioritizing the essential survival needs of people in rural communities and in Indiana. So to kind of, Jimmy, to kind of sum up my answer here, we are in real trouble if we do not stand up and say that we got to stop the constant cuts to Medicaid. We have to prioritize the funding of our hospitals, and we have to stop pretending like it's optional. We have to stop pretending like you can just put healthcare for people as a luxury option, because it isn't a luxury option. It's my mom, like it's my wife, it's your family. And we are either going to do what it takes to make sure that they have healthcare, or we are going to abandon the very people that make our lives in Indiana what they are. And I'm not going to do that. So it's really simple. We have the means to take care of people in our communities. It's a question of whether we have the political will to do what it takes.
Follow up to that. Hi, I'm Renee.
Hi, Renee.
How? How, when elected, would you do that?
How, when elected, would I create the political will to fund our hospitals?
There we go.
Thank you so much, Renee. That is a very good question. The most essential engine we have for funding rural hospitals is Medicaid. Ooh, Medicaid. The big one, the big one. It's often said that the United States is an insurance company with a military. Because the biggest budget line items in our country are providing healthcare for people and building weapons and feeding soldiers. We spend a lot of money on that in this country, a lot of money. We spend twice as much on healthcare in the United States as every other modern nation. Twice as much per person. And nobody really wants to interrogate that. It's like, well, it costs what it costs. You know? I mean, people, you know, it's expensive. Healthcare is expensive. You can go to any other country and you will find that at the high levels, they look at pharmaceutical companies and they say, yeah, you can't charge 400% of what it costs to make that medicine. You can make a profit on this medicine in Portugal. You can make a profit on this medicine in Germany. You just can't make 2,000% profit off of sick people. And when you say it like that, you're like, well, yeah, I mean, who would make 2,000% profit off of the drug that sick people need? And the answer is pharmaceutical companies. They can and they do. Insulin is a big one, right? We've gone up, insulin is one of diabetes is an extremely common condition in Indiana and across the country. Diabetes. Thank you, Renee. And we have seen this fight over the cost of insulin in the last 10, 15 years as public awareness has grown about the fact that insulin is super cheap to make. It is really, really damn cheap to make insulin. And over the last 15 years, there was growing public awareness that, like, wait a minute, I'm paying $300 a month for insulin and it costs the company about $5 to make a month's supply of insulin. What the hell? And there were statewide initiatives that sprang up, and if you're on Medicaid Part D, your insulin costs for a 30-day supply of insulin are capped at $35 on Medicaid Part D. That's for the whole nation. Now, if you aren't on Medicaid Part D, it depends on what state you're in. My personal icon, James Tallarico out of Texas, he pushed through a bill in Texas that limited the cost of insulin at $35 a month. We do not have that law in Indiana. We don't have really any laws in our state that directly cap the costs of medicine. Because that takes political will. That takes confronting donors. That takes confronting PACs. How do we bring down the cost of medicine so that our hospitals are making margins, so that our hospitals are not constantly in the red in rural counties like Washington and Harrison? We have to stand up for Medicaid and Medicare and make sure that those reimbursements are stop getting cut and are fully paid. But also, let's stop pretending like the people who are making huge profit margins off of our illnesses just have to make those margins in our state. We can't interrogate it. We can't hold hearings. We can't say, how much does it actually cost you to make this antidepressant? And what is your justification for charging this profit margin on it? It makes people nervous. You're like, state control, coming in. If we are talking about, we're not talking about the cost of a car or the cost of a luxury item. We're talking about life-saving medicine. This is the public good, and it is the domain of the public to have a say in it. And we depend on our representatives to do that for us.
We've actually got a comment online that Eli Lilly is the reason nothing will ever change here. They could have influenced some change.
There is a comment online that says one of the reasons that hasn't changed in our state is because of Eli Lilly. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know the details of that personally, but where there is money and where there is a monopoly, where there is power, you can expect that it gets its way. So again, hi, I'm a garbage man for Southern Indiana. None of that is mine. None of that has any say or pull over me. I am running a grassroots campaign. We are not taking money from PACs. We are not taking money from corporations. We are here to do what's right for Southern Indiana. And that means we have to interrogate why it costs so damn much to be sick in Indiana. We can do something about that. We can hold these companies accountable and be like, yes, we want you to succeed. We want you to pay the people who work for you a good wage. We want you, brilliant inventors and patents and medicine makers, to turn a profit. There's a limit. There is a limit to how much you can squeeze sick people for money. So that's those two things, making sure Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements are upheld and interrogating the sources of the high cost medicine. It's not just pharmaceutical companies. There's a lot of middlemen in our country that need to be shaken down and addressed why they are driving up the cost of medicine and healthcare in our country. And that's what I will do. Another comment online? A question online.
What if Shane asked, what if Trump wanted to send the National Guard to India?
A friend online asked, what if Trump wanted to send the National Guard to Indiana? Well, there are a lot of ways I could answer that. I'm going to answer it as 18-year-old me, who was homeschooled all 12 grades, was a very, very conservative person as I left high school. You should have seen my speech that I gave at my Toastmasters class about gun ownership and the rights of the Second Amendment and standing up for castle laws. But regarding the federal government unilaterally sending the National Guard into our state, 18-year-old conservative Ethan would stand up and say, not on your life. For what cause? Are cities burning? Is there an actual state of emergency? Is there an uprising? Is the governor asking for aid from the federal government? Is a mayor crying out for help because he's lost control of the population? Because without those things, 18-year-old Ethan, like 38-year-old Ethan will tell you, that is tyranny. When a federal power can unilaterally put armed soldiers on your streets against the wishes of your governor, against the wishes of your mayor, that is authoritarianism, period. That is a conservative opinion. 100%. That is a conservative position. If the federal government can unilaterally put soldiers on your street and declare emergencies of their own volition without any consultation with state government, That is federal overreach, and it is the really, really dangerous kind. We're talking about bullets. We're talking about people who are not trained to deal with crowds. They are soldiers. They have training. They have a role, and it is not maintaining vigilance over a populace. You are asking for a crisis when you put soldiers in the position of civil servants. That is a conservative opinion. And that is what I would say to what if Trump puts National Guard on the streets in Indiana. I would say every Hoosier of conscience, whether you are left or right, you have to say this is a danger to our Constitution, this is a danger to our country, and it's a danger to our neighborhoods. We do not want soldiers on our streets. It has to be an actual crisis to warrant that kind of intervention. Okay, appreciate it.
Where else? Where else? Oh, hey. How's it going, bud?
Good. I'll go to the microphone.
Go to the microphone.
Yes, Aiden,
Hi, Aiden.
thinking about your campaign, what was the moment you decided to run, and how did that affect what your legislative priorities would be if you were elected?
Thanks so much for that question, Aiden. Aiden says, the moment you decided to run, what was that moment, and how will that affect your legislative priorities, your legislative priorities if you are elected? It's a fun one. I was at work. I've been working a sales job for the last 5 years. I was at work, I was minding my own business, and I got a phone call from a neighbor of mine, a guy named Dan Cannon, who ran for Congress here in the 9th District a few years back. And Dan basically set me up. Dan and I have had many conversations as neighbors over the last 4 or 5 years. And he kind of needled at me to run for something. And like most sane people, I told him that he was a bad friend and I would do no such thing. And, but he really got me because he also said that he'd been talking to some friends of his who held office in our state. And between him and them and various phone calls that day, I got. The seed was planted. And I was like, well, I'm going to go home and tell my wife and daughter about this. And like any sane person, they're going to say, why would you do this? It's a bad idea. And I was wrong. I texted my wife about what had happened, about the conversations. And she was like, oh, you got to do that. You got to do that. I came home. There was a dance party already underway. My daughter wanted to know when we were going to be interviewed by local news and began picking out her outfits. And after we got her to bed that night, my wife Howard and I actually got to sit down. The way she said it was that, honey, it feels like this is the thing that you weren't looking for, but's been looking for you for a long time. And you know the meme of Pablo Escobar from Narcos, where he's by himself, just like looking into the empty pool and standing and looking out at the horizon. That was me from about 9 p.m. until about 1 a.m. that evening. Just like getting really familiar with the texture of the ceilings in my house. Because with nobody else to ask it, I got to ask myself, why would you do this? Why would you put yourself in the public light and reveal to the world how little you really know about everything? And the conclusion that I have come to since that moment, and particularly in the week that followed, it was about a week after that, State Senator Melissa Hortman out of Minnesota and her husband Mark were assassinated in their home. That happened about a week after this phone call of her thinking about running for office. And there was the assassin had a long list of officials that the assassin was planning to hunt down. And I've been feeling for a really long time how dire the division in our country is, how the rhetoric and the campaigns to keep people angry and divided for the sake of the rich and the powerful, and how it's polluted and saturated every area of our life. And I like people. It's a problem I have. I've always liked people. I like talking to them. I like hearing their stories. I like meeting their families and getting to know what's going on in their lives. And it really, really, it's hurt to see how deep division has gotten in our country and how really, really powerful organizations have invested billions of dollars in making sure people stay angry and divided. And making sure people, the first thing they want to know is, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? How do you feel about immigrants? Then turn these into wedges that split our neighborhoods apart and split our communities apart, when in fact, when you look around, we are people who have 98% of our lives in common. We deal with the same traffic, we shop at the same stores, we deal with the same availability problems, we deal with the same rising utility costs. Our kids go to the same schools, and yet we've let the most powerful media corporations in the world convince us that half of our neighbors are our enemies, and I'm sick of it. I'm really, really sick of it. And I'm really, really sick of leaders that do nothing but feed into it. And I have, for a number of years now, been having this single clarifying thought that we are not in a moment that is really about left versus right, but is about the bottom versus the top. And there are not enough people who are leading that charge. And I like people, and I like talking. And apparently, those are essential characteristics if you want to be a representative on the state level. And so I decided to step in and do that, and you talk about whatever my priorities be. My priorities would be the things that we all hold in common, like healthcare, which I'm not going to reiterate that answer right now. There would be things like childcare, where especially talking about our families who are making $40,000 a year or less. We've had subsidies in our state that help people afford daycare so that both parents could work. And those subsidies are being drastically cut back and have been eliminated in many cases in our state. And so now you have people with the choice between having someone to watch my kids or having a job that's going to help us keep the heat on this winter. It is abominable to me that we are forcing that choice on Hoosiers. And speaking of keeping the heat on, utilities. I am running to tackle head on the constantly rising prices of our utility providers with justifications that say, well, we're projecting this amount of energy use coming down the road, so we're getting ahead of it with these increases. And every time we see that happen, they're like, well, if it doesn't go up that much, we'll reduce and bring it down. And that never happens. It always goes up, and it stays up, whatever the justification was for why it went up. And we've been dealing with data centers, right? Because right now the AI boom in our country is the overwhelming majority of GDP, which is another issue that we could talk about. But like right now, this year, gross domestic production in the United States is really, really bad. And you don't realize how bad it is until you realize that when you look at that, I think it was like just about 2-3% GDP, that almost all of that is the AI boom. almost all of that is data center creation. So that's a separate issue. But they're building data centers in Indiana. And we know that a data center can be built in sustainable ways where the water that is used for cooling can be filtered and cleaned and put back into our system, not just dumped. And the reason we know that is because it's happening everywhere else in the world that data centers are being built. It's happening in Europe where these data centers not only clean and put the water back into the system, but they also set up their system so that it's producing energy, not just sucking it off the grid. So it's actually helping to lower costs, lower utility bills, and provide the water that it's taking right back into the system so that there's no loss. So those are priorities for me as a legislator. The affordability of healthcare, the affordability of childcare, your utilities, and making sure that if we are going to do big projects like data centers, we're going to not close our eyes and pretend like there aren't sustainable solutions that these companies can be profitable with. We know they can be profitable with it because these same companies, these same providers, the models they're taking them from other places, they're building data centers, and they know it can be done. It's just cheaper to do it dirty in Indiana. And there aren't legislators who say, no, not on our watch. So, I don't know, man. It seems pretty simple. If we treat people the way we want to be treated on every level of our lives, such as what kind of businesses and what you do with the resources of our state that we invest in and allow to flourish in Indiana, most of our problems can be addressed. But we need somebody to say, why are we doing it this way? And why are we doing it in a way where 7 generations from now, they will look back and say, thank God they did it in a sustainable way. We got an online question.
Amy says it's not a secret that our immigration process is broken. It's been broken a very long time. I know many immigrants who have become citizens, and they've expressed the level of difficulty it takes to become a citizen. How would you address fixing our current immigration process?
Amy online asked a question about immigration, and she brings up how the immigration process has been broken for a really long time, and that Amy has personally spoken with people who are in the immigration process or have gone through it, and how difficult and how expensive it is and how long it takes. And she's asking, what would I do to address the red hot button issue of immigration in the United States? As a state senator in Indiana, there is a serious cap on my influence in what I can do. One thing that we can do, because one reason why it's hard to do that is because immigration is a national security question. It is at its core, it is controlled and legislated at the national level. That said, my faith and my upbringing together make one thing absolutely clear to me, and it is that we have to treat people the way we want to be treated, not because it's nice, not because it sounds good, but because it is the only way to build a just society. Every injustice that we have seen down the long history of the world, every dark chapter in our own country's history, can be summed up by there was a group of people who the powerful decided did not deserve to be treated the same as the powerful would want to be treated if the roles were reversed. Yep. And they built policies and they built systems that enforced their power and their privilege over this group of people. Every single dark chapter can be summed up that way. And we want to keep pretending like, oh, well, this problem is one we've never encountered before. We need different solutions for where we are today. Immigration is an important and complicated problem, but the reason it is so complicated is because nobody wants to look their neighbor in the face, look legislators in the face and say, we can only make policies and choices that we would want enacted if the roles were reversed, period. Because anything else is signing up to become party to the possibility, at minimum, of participating in another dark chapter in our nation's history. And I won't do that. So a little more practically, we have to, oh man, our current moment is really, really bad. It's really, really bad. Our for-profit prison and incarceration system is so broken. It incentivizes bodies in cells because at every level, the people doing the detention, whether they are state entities or whether they are private, they are making money on the blood and sweat of the people who they are holding in concrete pens.
Yep.
That is horrific. It doesn't have to be that way. Suppose I agreed with absolutely every ridiculous thing, the most extreme positions that can be thrown at the immigration argument right now. Suppose I said yes, and the solution is that 15 million people have to leave the country one way or another. Concrete pens where big corporations profit off of the separation of families, people whose worst crime is paperwork related. It is related to a civil violation as to whether or not they have the right documents to be in the United States. I think that we need an orderly immigration process. I truly believe we need to fix the broken football that keeps getting kicked down the road. But when you say that the solution is to take someone's dad and zip him out of the state to somewhere the family can't find him, where lawyers can't find him, where he's going to be stuffed into a concrete pen with dozens of other terrified people who are without hope and without access to legal advice, I'm going to say you want the darkest chapter in history to be happening right now. And it is not acceptable to have leaders shrug their shoulders and say, it's out of our power. There's nothing we can do about that. It is not acceptable. If representative legislation has any role in our country, it's to be the first person who throws themselves in front of the wheel of injustice. It's to be the first person on the line. That's what it's for. If it's not for that, then it's not for anything. Martin Luther King and the Freedom Riders, they had to be on the front lines because they were surrounded by elected officials who were too scared to risk it themselves. And they had to put their bodies and the bodies of their neighbors on the front line because the powers that be did not want to get involved. It was too risky. It didn't look good for the cameras. I believe that being a representative leader begins with recognizing that you are representing the common good of your community. And it better be the least of these. It better not leave out the people that have been left out before. So what do we do about immigration? We gotta elect people to Congress. It's a little bit above my pay grade, but at my pay grade, we can address in Indiana what we greenlight for the treatment of immigrants. We can address in Indiana whether we let out of control federal agencies that are sucking up 150 billion taxpayer dollars to put untrained, unprepared, newly minted and authorized federal agents with ungodly powers to grab people off the streets in vans without judicial warrants. State senators can do something about that. State senators can raise hell about that. State senators can be in the neighborhoods where it's happening and be like, hey, I'm a state senator, who are you? Let me see your warrant, who are you here for? There are people who are dangerous. There is a role for immigration enforcement in the United States, but it isn't Miss Maria who is teaching at the school. It isn't her husband who is a roofer. And that the worst problem is they overstayed their visa. And so you're sending a masked man in a black van to rip him out of his car and leave his kid unattended in the back seat, which has happened. And it doesn't have to be that way. And acting like it has to be that way is reprehensible. And anyone in leadership who acts like it has to be that way should answer to their voters, but sure as hell will answer to God one day. So I think that that's something that a state senator should do if they're elected. I was raised in church.
Hey, it's Ben again.
Ben, hi Ben. I'm bringing down my heart rate. Thank you.
Take a deep breath. I will just take a few moments here to kind of hijack and say, on those topics you talked about, it seems to be the administration is starting to rethink the strategy they've been using as a result of people across the aisle, red, blue, and purple, all pushing back against the ways these things are being done. So we've talked about that immigration is a bipartisan issue that does need to be addressed. Also, speaking of other areas that many people of many stripes coming together have worked here in the state of Indiana, right? We talked about, I mean, if you win this, and I do hope you do.
Thanks, man.
You're welcome. You will be sitting in a still red state with a lot of other people. So your ability to help turn the tide will be contingent upon being able to work together with people across the aisle. I want to give the 21 Hoosier senators that did vote, Republican senators that did vote against the redistricting, some credit. How do you seize this moment while people like that, good character like a Republican like myself, who do believe in doing the civic right thing, how do you take this moment to reinforce and uplift them and try to build those inroads when they're going to be deeply attacked by those super PACs, by those individuals that don't believe in carrying civic duty across the aisle, that don't care that that was a completely un-Republican, Republic eroding institutional idea that didn't come from state power, but came from federal authority? How do you help sow those seeds so that way when you're in office, you can find growth across the aisle? Because Democrats in the state won't pass legislation alone that is meaningful and impactful, in my opinion.
That's a really great question. That's a really great question, Ben. Ben, those that didn't catch it, Ben asked a really essential question. If I get elected, I will be part of a minority group. I will be part of a minority in the state Senate. How will I work across the aisle to build consensus with conservatives who might differ from me on a lot of opinions, who also are likely going to be facing pressure? For those who are unaware, the redistricting fight that we just went through in Indiana that just got settled in the state Senate, there were, yes, it required, that was great. The redistricting fight in Indiana got settled because 21 Republican state senators joined 10 Democrat state senators to kill the federal demand that we gerrymander and redistrict in the middle of the decade. I have, not to brag, I have deep conservative bona fides. As Paul would say, would anyone boast? I have more reason to boast. I was raised very, very conservative. I was homeschooled all 12 grades. My family is politically active within, and conservative principles are far from being unknowable or foreign to me, are deeply felt and understood, even whenever I don't always agree with them anymore. And take an issue like redistricting. I don't have to oppose redistricting on progressive grounds. I certainly can. I can make the argument as a progressive why redistricting and gerrymandering is bad for Indiana. But I can do it maybe even better as a conservative. I think that a common cause in the state Senate is going to be focused around holding back federal overreach and state power where it isn't appropriate. And I think that especially has to do with privacy, especially has to do with people's personal lives. And that does include things like LGBT protections. That does include things like voter records. That includes medical records. It includes decisions you make with your doctor. These are areas of personal privacy, and I can believe I can partner with conservatives on a lot of these issues, even when we get to hot button ones, even when we get to places where we might diverge, such as women's health care and the right to terminate a pregnancy, and at what stage can you be allowed to terminate a pregnancy. I can have those conversations with conservatives, and I believe I can have good faith conversations with good faith people. And even when I can't, I come from a family of debaters, man. I come from a family where argument is how we come together. It's how we, really how we get to know one another. It's hard to have a conversation, but it's easy to have a debate. And whether we are on the same side of an issue or not, I will always be looking at where is power in this conversation and who is it being levied over, and especially is it being levied against someone. There better be a damn good reason if we're levying power over and against Hoosiers. There better be a really, really good reason. And hopefully, it will always be answering this question. Is this aimed at the vulnerable, at controlling people who don't have the ability to advocate for themselves? Is this aimed at convenient minorities who are frequently scapegoated? Or is this aimed at the powerful? Is this aimed at the people that have set the system up in their favor? Is this aimed at making people's lives more affordable and more safe? And I think that I believe, I hope that we can change the political conversation in Indiana in the way that it has to change in our country around those conversations, around moving it out of, is this a Republican idea? Is this a Democrat idea? No, this is an idea that makes life more affordable for Hoosiers and makes every Hoosier, no matter who you are, no matter where your parents came from, no matter what you look like, no matter what school you go to or who you love, you have rights and you deserve to be safe. And I think that, every time I say it, that's a really progressive argument. And it's also a really conservative argument. And I think we need to be able to acknowledge that to each other. And when we do, a lot of these hot button cultural issues start to melt, and we start to see that there are people that make a lot of money off of making us believe that we disagree about these things. There are organizations, there are ideologues who are ideologically motivated, who do not have the common good in mind, who are pursuing special interests that make their money and build their case off of confusing and distorting the issue so that we feel like we don't actually have all this in common. And we do. And I'm not shy about, I'm not here to be like, it's all about saying kumbaya. Like, I'm here to throw down when we need to. I'm not shy about saying LGBT people are people and they deserve full human rights and recognition. I am not shy about saying that immigrants are made in the image of God, every single one, and every single one that you want to treat to a different standard than you want to be treated with is something you will answer to me to if I get elected, but you will certainly answer to God, and I will remind you of that daily. I believe that we have these deeply felt morals almost overwhelmingly in common. And I think that everybody saw Karate Kid and took away who the good guy was and who the bad guy was. And there are bad actors who really think that Johnny had it right when he swept the leg, but I think it is a distinct minority of our neighbors. And I think that most people, whenever they come face to face with real people and are shown the real stories of our neighbors, when we put down the ideological gongs and actually speak to one another, I believe that we can bridge these gaps because they are manufactured for the benefit of rich and powerful people. So that's what I would do in terms of conservative, progressive divides in our state. Good on time. 7:30. Ooh. We're going strong. Thanks again, Salem American Legion, for having us out here. It's really, really nice of you guys. And yeah, they're having a 22 shoot here on Saturday morning by the by. If you are in Washington County or Harrison County or Floyd County, or obviously Scott and surrounding counties, you don't have to be out in the cold. You can be inside. It's amazing. That's amazing. It's a great idea. So yeah, that's Saturday morning. You can their Facebook page. You can follow it. They've got all their events up there. Don't miss it. This is a local institution, y'all. Be here. What's next? What do you mean?
What is a 22 shoot? I don't know what that is.
they turn this into a little gun range in here.
Oh,
Yeah, they're gonna shoot 22 birdshot at targets in here because this is America.
That's right. My friend lives that way all the time.
What do you, Ray? What was the question?
Oh, the next house.
The next town hall. So for those who don't know, we are going to be doing town halls every 2 weeks from now until the election. Why are we doing that? Because I believe that representation begins and ends with showing up in person and talking to each other like neighbors and answering questions and making sure we're not dodging the issues or making sure that we gatekeep who gets to ask questions so that we only have convenient soundbite answers. And that's not just how I want to run a campaign. If you elect me to the Indiana State Senate, when we're not in session, we're going to have at minimum bi-monthly town halls. At minimum. It is not a secret that our current state senator has never held a town hall or public listening session. And that doesn't make him distinct. That is the status quo. That is the status quo for our Congress people. It is the status quo for our state representatives. Most people who get elected to public office are handpicked by whoever the ruling party is, be it blue or be it red. And they are like, we're going to introduce you to the right people. We're going to show you to the right donors. And if you do that, we're going to put out the mailers. And if people see your name on the ballot under the right political party, we'll pull the lever for you and boom, you're in. That is the status quo. That is how many, many people in our state and across the country end up in office. And so why would you take the terrible, terrible risk of holding a town hall if the way you got to power was just by appealing to those who already have power? It makes sense. It's a solid strategy, but I think it is, if you will excuse me, a bullshit way to do representation. And the way we're campaigning here is also the way we will represent this district. When we are not in session, we will at minimum be holding 2 public town halls, 2 public listening sessions every month while I am the state senator, because I believe representation begins and ends with showing up in person, having conversations as neighbors, and making sure people's voices are heard and their stories are seen, and the things that are really going on in our community are not graphs or filtered concepts brought by special interest groups to the Capitol building, but are things that your representative knows because he was in Fredericksburg, because I was in Palmyra, because I held a listening session in Mockport, and you came and you told me how your utilities are unaffordable, or you came and you told me how you got ripped off by this business, or you came and you told me that your grandmother is sick and the at-home care nurse can't come because the funds have been cut and you don't have any way to afford it. Those should not be abstract concepts that your representative knows about because they have a special interest group that tells them or doesn't tell them, and it never shows up on their radar. I have no choice but to approach representation in a pastoral way because it's how I was raised. And I believe that showing up as a representative means taking care of people and having real conversations. So Our next town hall is actually going to be, next town hall actually is going to be back out here, but no, sorry. On January 1st, we're going to hold a digital one. And then, so wherever you consume social media, you can join us online. And it's going to be on January 1st. So for those of you that stay up really, really late and have a really good time on New Year's Eve, don't worry. We're going to have it at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on January 1st. So you're waking up and you're kind of, not in a great place yet and your head might hurt a little bit. Don't worry, just go to the couch, get your blanket, get your water. You can open up your social media and we'll have a little town hall. You can ask questions and we can have a good conversation, all from the safety of our living rooms. And then we're back on the road. On January 15th, we'll actually be back in Washington County. We're still doing that down. We're trying to get a facility in Campbellsburg. We'll see if that works out. If you follow me at my website, I'm on social medias at Facebook and on Instagram and on TikTok. Please give me a follow. I'm funny and I would love to talk to you. And also, if you go to my website, ethanforstatesenate.com. We're updating our schedule there regularly, and we will always have a banner at the top of my website that says where we're going to be next and what time. So we are going to be, it's 3 counties, it's 152,000 people, and I want to talk to you. I want to hear your questions. You feel like I've missed something tonight, you feel like I'm dodging an issue, I want to hear about it, because that's what neighbors do, especially it's what representatives should do. So that's the way it's going to go, and I hope to see you out there. I hope I get to meet you soon. And is there any other questions before we kind of land the plane here this evening? Oh, Renee.
Okay.
Hi, Renee.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
This is fun.
This is having a great time.
All the cool kids. Okay, so
Can you hold it slightly closer to your mouth?
Yes.
You nailed it.
It's the church.
Oh, I understand.
Okay. Anyway, what are you already hearing from people that you are wanting to represent? Like, what are you hearing from them that is affecting them that makes you say, yes, I know that I'm doing the right thing and I am the person who will be your voice?
Thank you, Renee. Renee asks, of people I've met so far and had conversations with as we've been started on the campaign trail, what am I hearing from people in our district that makes me say, I will be your representative? What are the issues that people are talking to me about? One that I keep hearing about, and that I feel really, really profoundly has to do with affordable housing. I moved to New Albany in 2009, and I started working on the garbage truck in 2009. And my wife and I got married in December of 2009. We were dating long distance, and I moved here and we got married. And we rented an apartment behind IUS for about 3 years. And I had no money, and my wife had no money, and she was a college student. And the garbage truck was my lifeline to my hope for a middle-class existence. And the apartment we rented cost $550 a month plus utilities. And we aggressively saved for 3 years, trying to put together a down payment for a house. And in 2012, we were able to put that down payment down on a house in New Albany. And that house cost us about $139,000 at its purchase price. We sold that house in 2020. No, sorry, I'm wrong. We sold the house in 2022. What is time? We sold the house in 2022 for just about double what we bought it for in 2012. The apartment that we rented those first 3 years that we were married, in the same apartment complex, the exact same unit, rents for about $1,100 a month today. We talked earlier about how wages in the country steadfastly do not go up, and we have chronically depressed income here in Indiana. If I had started today at the exact same job, renting the exact same apartment, hoping to buy a house like the one we bought in 2012, there is not a chance that in 3 years, that in 10 years, we could have done that. And I have friends who are at that stage in their lives, peers, people in their mid-30s, who have been renting and have been trying to find good work and are out there, and they are paying twice as much in rent as what I paid, looking at houses that are 2 to 3 times more expensive than the house I bought, not because they did something wrong, not because they goofed up or they threw away their lives, but because everything is twice as expensive as it was just 10 years ago. And we have leaders who want to say, oops, the economy, who knows? Who knows how that happens? It happens when investment firms start treating single-family homes as financial assets that they want to snap up off the market and hold in escrow so that they can collect rent, so that they can just hold it as a value product. They don't even have to put anybody in it. They can just hold it and have it as part of a financial product that's collateral for other things that they're doing. There are no rules about that in Indiana. There are no laws that say this is who can buy single-family homes so that they stay available. And when all these homes get purchased and snatched up off the market, guess what happens to housing prices? They go up. We can do something about that. We have the power to make rules that change the dynamic between people that are looking for their first home and billion-dollar corporations who look at their home as an asset in one of their something they can leverage against their debt elsewhere. So I hear a lot about how hard it is to find affordable rent. I hear a lot about how hard it is to find a house you can afford. And it breaks my heart and it hits really close to home because I see my peers and I see people who are younger than me and I see people who are older than me who are all in this same situation. And I know that I do not have a house because I am a genius. I do not have a house because I work harder than them. I do not have a house because I prepared better than they did. It so happened that I was renting when the housing market collapsed. And it so happened that I purchased before a crisis that was created by the richest and most powerful people in our country, a crisis that was created to enrich themselves, that none of them suffered penalties for, that none of them had to pay back their bailouts, and that none of them went to jail over. It so happened that I was at a stage in my life that when I was ready to buy a house, the housing market in Indiana was still depressed, and the house was a price I could afford. That house is double that price today, not because housing is like a genius now, and the people who run things are so smart and everything's more expensive now. It's just because of where the economy crashed and where it was on the way back up. And that really gets me. It really, really gets me. We have a sickness in the United States where we look at how much money people make and we look at the assets they are holding and we wonder how much debt they have and we make moral assessments about them on that basis. You're struggling, maybe you're dumb. You're struggling, maybe you don't work hard. You can't afford rent? Yeah, matcha lattes. Oh, those matcha lattes. Boomers, the boomer generation, 90% of them made more money than their parents did. 90% of boomers made more money when they got a job than the previous generation did. For millennials, it's a little less than 50%. For Gen Z, it is even lower. And we want to pretend that that's something to do with the moral qualifications or the work ethic of our entire country's youth. And that is bullshit. That is bullshit that is invented by the rich and the powerful to protect themselves and the schemes they have put in place to enrich themselves. And they've got people here in Washington County, and they have people in Floyd and in Harrison County who have been infected with the idea that whether or not you're financially successful is because you worked hard or you were lazy. And that's bullshit. And when I hear people talk about how unaffordable rent is, and how unaffordable housing is, and how unaffordable healthcare is, I see decades of Democrats and Republicans serving the interests of the rich and the powerful over the interests of the people in our communities. And we are sick to death of the excuses. We are sick to death of being treated like it is our fault that the system has been built this way. We are sick to death that neglect and dereliction have been treated like necessities, that there's just powerless leaders who can't do anything. It's time to stand together. It's time to look across the aisle and realize that we have almost everything in common. It's time to look at marginalized groups. It's time to stand up for the people who've been standing alone and say, guys, it doesn't have to be this way. And it wasn't this way. It was made this way. And there are people who are making a lot of money because it is this way. It's time to put the power back in the hands of everyday Hoosiers. It's time to help hardworking people in our communities find the path forward they have been laboring for. And it's time to stand up for other people the way we would want them to stand up for us if the roles were reversed. And that's why I'm running for state senate. Guys, really, thank you so much. This is really fun. Thank you again, American Legion 41. Say hello. And Skylar, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think that's it for our town hall this evening. January 1st, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after you've had the chance to sleep off everything that you did on New Year's Eve. Or for those of you that are just gonna go to bed at 10 o'clock like me, I hope you get to read a good book on New Year's Day ahead of it live. Maybe something you want to ask questions about afterwards. And we'll see you on the live, and we'll see you out there on the campaign trail. So, Renee, what is it? Yeah. What is it? Oh, yes. No, I got you. Washington County Dems have a meeting tomorrow night, Tuesday night, at the Coalition. Nope. At the classroom at the hospital. The Washington County Democratic Party is having their monthly meeting at 6 o'clock at the classroom at Ascension St. Vincent. I got all those details right as they were being mouthed to me.
Special guest Shelley Yoder.
Special guest, Senate Minority Leader Shelley Yoder on Zoom from 6:30 to 7. Don't miss it, people. It's gonna be super cool. Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys. Let's do this. Let's build a better community for our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There was so much of my spit in this microphone.
As there should be.
So much spit.
Okay, so. Never done that before. Oh, I have. Okay, hang on. Let's just take a picture now. Oh my god. 259 words. 2 gifts. 2 gifts. The new follower. Wait. Oh, that's his phone.
Does this one tell you the stats?
I don't know. No, probably not.
This is Facebook, so probably not.
Sorry, did we make 34 cents?
Apparently we made 34 just by being watched.
Well, I mean, obviously, because we're professionals.